we realize that many of the heritage stories that are being told, sometimes without any input or viewpoints from those people who the stories are being told about. And Stories of the Chesapeake Heritage Area seeks to address this issue with a series of workshops, and the first one is today. And then there are going to be two more, February the 8th and February the 15th, all of them at 1 o'clock. And we thought about nothing about me without me, making shared heritage interpretations a reality. And as we all go through this workshop today, we'd like for you to go away with something, understanding why we are having this workshop. We're going to have a series of people today speaking about projects that they are involved in. And through their conversations about their projects, how they started and where they are now, we are hoping that you will be able to understand how we came to this point of stories, nothing about me without me, making heritage interpretation a reality. So at first, I want to get started with the Chesapeake Heartland project. And the Chesapeake Heartland project is a collaboration between the National Museum of African American History and Washington College. And there's also a diverse array of local organizations, including Sumner Hall, Kent Cultural Alliance, and Kent County Public Library. And its mission is to preserve, digitize, interpret, and make accessible materials related to African American history and culture in Kent County and beyond. And before I introduce the speaker who's going to address this project, I would like for all of you to hold your questions until the end of the speaker's introduction. And we will go then to go to the chat room, and we will identify folk who really want to ask questions. And so that's how we'd like to do it, so that we can kind of keep the flow moving. So we would like to right now introduce Ms. Carolyn Brooks. Ms. Carolyn Brooks, who is with the Chesapeake Heartland. Are you here, Ms. Brooks? Ms. Carolyn Brooks?
I was just speaking with Carolyn. We work together. She's having some problems with her internet, but we're ready to continue to move forward.
Thank you so much, Ms. Johnson. Well, could we go with Mr. Washington? Clay Washington is with the Kennard Museum project up in Queen Anne County. And when this project began some 20 years ago, it was a small group of people starting a grassroots initiative to revive and restore the original Kennard High School and create a community center. And this has been realized with the creation and opening of the Kennard African American Culture Center. It's a fabulous place up in Centerville. And if you haven't been there, then you owe it to yourself to go. This center has become the hub for African American history programs and events, while highlighting the exhibits of its African American Heritage Museum. And I'd like to also say that Mr. Washington has been with that project since its inception. He, along with the group of the folk there at Kennard, have made this into a world-class project. And since he started doing that some time ago after serving in many other positions before he started to do this. He's done a wonderful job, and so has the association there. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Washington at this moment, and have him to present his project.
Gail, I'm not going to go step by step through the PowerPoint, but I do want you to know that we've been on this journey now for, Paulette said, almost 20 years. I got involved in the association has been in existence since the mid 80s, late 70s, mid 80s. And they acquired the property through Queen Anne's County. It was the old Kennard High School in Centerville. And at that point, the county wanted to kind of wash their hands of this school after it had been closed for about 40 years and say, let's get it off the books. So they made a gesture of giving it to the Kennard Alumni Association. But somebody had the forethought to say, don't give it to us, give it to us on a 99-year lease. And what that did, it kept the county invested in the building. And at that point, by 2004, 2005, the grassroots organization had to decide what they were going to do with it. And because it was severely devastated through age and non-use. And there were some pictures, if you could find one, Gail, to show them what this building looked like when we took it over. There's some internal pictures on that PowerPoint. You can go to them. Yo, can you hear me?
Clay, it's Jana. I'm finding the pictures now. I'm sorry.
Okay. And while she's finding them, I want to let you know that we weren't sure as an association what to do with the building. So one of the first things we had to do when we thought about restoring it was to find a way to use it. All too often, as many of you probably know, people start restoration projects for buildings that never get really used. And that's not what we wanted to see this see happen to this. What you're looking at right now is what the building looked like when it was being constructed in 1935. I was going to give you the history in a minute. I just wanted to show you what it looked like before we took it over.
Mhm.
Okay, she's running down the PowerPoint presentation that I made for, this was done for Preservation Maryland some years ago. Right there. Stop at that one for a minute. After that building, which was opened in 1936, used until 1966, and this is what it looked like in 2005 when I got involved with this project. And at that point, I had been involved in some nonprofits on the Western Shore. And I'd spent 40 years away from Queen Anne's County, but I came back to take care of my mom in late 2005, early 2006. And I got involved with the association and their desire to create something from this building, to restore it. So at that point, I kind of became the point person. I took over as president of the association, and we got a small grant from Preservation Maryland to help us decide on planning the use of this building. In 1930, I'm going to go back a minute. In 35, this building was built through the Works Progress Administration. I'm not sure you're aware of what this is. Some of you are too young to know what this is. But it was one of President Roosevelt's New Deal programs. And it put people back to work. And one of the things they did in Queen Anne's County was build a high school for African Americans, which did not exist heretofore. So in 35, they started the construction of this school. And it was on property that had been purchased by a group of trustees of men in Queen Anne's County, who my grandfather, I'm proud to say my grandfather was one of those men. There were 13 of them. They put together the money to buy the land that this building is on. And at that point, the Works Progress Administration through the Roosevelt's program and the Board of Education of Queen Anne's County put up this building for $2,600. In 1936, the building actually opened for use. and became Queen Anne's County's first African-American secondary school or high school. Some of you may be aware that most of the schools that existed for African-Americans heretofore had been 1 or 2 room schools. I went to one myself in the 1950s. And at that point, this was a major, major revelation for the county, for the African-American population in the county. We now had a real high school, which about 6 rooms, bathrooms, but unfortunately, there was no electricity in the building for some reason. So a couple of years later, they, through a lot of fundraising, grassroots fundraising, chicken dinners and selling jelly, eggs, whatever, they were able to put electricity in the building. But this building was used as the high school for African Americans through, I'm going to jump forward, through 1966 when the county schools integrated. And then it fell on disrepair and hard times. The county gave it to the association in 1996, where it's still set that way until about 2005, when they decided they got a grant to put a new roof on the building because the roof was collapsing. The interior was terrible. Holes in the floors, and it was in very sad shape, and we didn't know what to do with it. So the association did put a new roof on to stop the carnage, so to speak. And in 2007, when I took over as president, we got another small grant from Preservation Maryland, and we decided that we would come up with a use plan for the building. And at the same time, determine what it would cost to restore the building. We were fortunate enough to find a young man in the county who was the superintendent of construction for Queen Anne's County Schools. He was a young Nigerian by the name of Andy Anakaberi. And Andy partnered with us to help us navigate the process of restoration for this building. And one of the things that we had to do was find a way or find someone who could take that construction project on and still fit within the budget that had been determined for the restoration, which at the time was $1.5 million. So your first thing you say to yourself is, where are you going to find the money? How are you going to pay for it before you could even tackle it? Luckily, there was a little organization called the Stories of the Chesapeake Heritage Area. And they had a workshop on grant writing. I became the point for the association, and he became the point for the construction. And with the help of Elizabeth Watson, who was the executive director at the time, I sat in on that grant writing seminar and learned with their help how to write a grant, because we had to determine how are we going to fund the project. And one of the ways we were able to, we thought we'd be able to fund it was through either local, state, or federal funding to help with education and help with restoration. So I'm a pretty bold guy. And being the point person, I had to go ask people for money. That was my job in this project, or find ways to get it. And the best way I could find was to use tools that other people had already created. And one of them was given to me by the local heritage area. There was a grant that would be funded through the state, to fund preservation projects in the, I guess at the time, Paulette, you can correct me, or Gail, there was about 10 heritage areas throughout the state. I think there are now 12. And at that point,
Baltimore, yeah.
Yeah, I think there are 12 now. But anyhow, using the expertise that they showed me, I was able to write a grant with MHAA, the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority. And we requested a grant, our first grant of about $98,000. We can, and all state grants typically have to be matched. We did have enough funding in our coffers through many, many years of grassroots fundraising of almost $100,000. The other thing I did, I went to our local municipality, the county government, and asked them for $225,000. I pleaded my case, and they agreed to support us over a 2-year period, which gave us matching funds for other state grants. If somebody's going to take on a project of this size, and there's some even bigger than this, 3 things have to happen. 1, you got to have somebody that's committed to it. 2, you have to find somebody that has the expertise to handle it. And 3, you have to find a way to fund it. And this perfect storm came together for us. We found a way to ask for money. There were multiple grants as we got into this project. And in 2010, by 2010, we had raised enough money to start this project, start the restoration. We were blessed with Andy's expertise. He walked us through every, all of the engineering, all of the architectural problems, and he also walked us through getting a general contractor to oversee all the subcontractors and get the work done. So in 2010, we started the project, and we had enough money to get through the first phase of the restoration, which took us into about 2013. And at that point, we're still doing fundraising. And there was a grant that became available again through the state of Maryland called the African American Preservation Program, African American Heritage Preservation Program. And they were providing grants up to $100,000, okay, that you did not have to match. And that was the real blessing for this project. We were able to, over a 3-year period, get three of those grants, which provided us funding of $280,000. But if it had not been for that, it would have been tough to find matching money for all these grants. So we were able to continue the final restoration phase in 2015 through that money and through money that was provided through what's called the General Assembly Bond Bill Program. I don't know how many have heard of that. But at that point, you get your local senator, your local delegate to write a bill to request funding for your project. And all along the way, I had people that were at my side to be able to go to Annapolis and plead our case to our senators and our delegates. And we were able to receive bond bill funding. And then I made a list here somewhere. Here we go. Bond bill funding in the neighborhood of $575,000 over a 3-year period. So by 2015, 2016, we were able to start the final phase, which was really the interior restoration of the building. Again, you need drive and passion, you need construction expertise, and you need funding. And we were able to put these things together in a way through some very cooperative work with Stories of the Chesapeake, with the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority, with the state legislature, with our local municipal government, and with some donors also, because we ended up putting about $250,000 into the project ourselves as an organization. And I'm not sure that will ever happen, would ever be able to happen again. But in order for it to happen, you again have to have those 3 things working for you. So if somebody's looking to tackle a project like this, first you need a person in your organization that has the ability and the stamina to stick it out, to go through it. And then you have to find someone, and there's always someone, believe it or not, in your area, in your sphere of influence, that has the expertise for the construction part of it. You just have to find them and convince them to be part of it. Sometimes you have to write them into your grant so they can get paid for it. The guy that we had did it pro bono. We gave him very little money for this project because we had very little to write in for him. But he stuck with us through the entire restoration. And the third thing is you have to get your local government to buy in. You have to get your local organizations to buy in. And there's money through the state government, through their programming, to also buy in. But you have to convince them that it's worth it. And what we had going for us, I guess, was we had made up our minds that we wanted to share our history and culture with the citizens of Queen Anne's County and beyond. So the first thing you have to do as an organization is to create a story. And it's a real story, by the way, in our case. And that story allowed us to tell why it was important to do this work and to make this happen. And the real reason was nobody else was telling our story in the area. And it was up to us to make sure we weren't forgotten. Paul, it's important that people know that we're part of the process.
Yes.
We're part of the reason that the county has grown.
Mhm.
And we wanted to let people see that. So what the real purpose of this project was not just to create and restore a building, it was to pass along our history and our heritage to those who come behind, and for them to have something to hold on to going forward. So I would suggest, if you have a need in your community, okay, is that you find a way to be passionate about it and not be afraid to step up to do what needs to be done. The payoff for us is what this restoration created. It created an African-American history museum for us. And the place itself is a museum, the building itself, because it tells about the history and culture of our people in the county from really beyond. We tell the story. The story starts with how we got there, and we tell it right through to today. So I just want to commend and thank all those who were with us on this journey. But I think it's more important, though, to let people know that we're just beginning. This facility is a community resource. Even though we now own it, by the way, the county leased it to us for 99 years, but they sold it to us in 2012 for $1. Again, great buy-in from our local county government. And at that point, we have something we can pass along to the next generation and beyond. So I'm happy today to tell you that it works. It works. It takes work, but it does work if you're committed to it. And we've been committed to this, and we partner with a lot of people along the way. And some of those partnerships are just beginning. To give you an example, we have one of the things we wanted to do, and you saw some of our goals in that PowerPoint. One of the things we've always wanted to do was to have a youth or community, young people's mentoring program in this building. And we started it started about 2 months ago, but the young people will be actually starting next week in a youth mentoring program. And I think Yolanda is on the Zoom today, headed up by a group called Unity Mentoring, which is headed up by Yolanda Acree. We've also gotten involved with a group called the Institute of Adult Learning, which has been in existence for about 20 years. It's at Chesapeake College. It will now be starting up on February the 7th at Kennard. So we've got both ends of the spectrums going there, which is all part of our vision, but it allows people to come and see what we're doing. And hopefully they will join with us in using this building for a myriad of programs in the future. I'm looking forward to working with the Chesapeake Heartland project. They moved from Kent County into other counties to record and digitize our history. It's something we're looking to do anyhow, but they have a vehicle for that. And I'm a person that doesn't like to reinvent the wheel. If I find something that's working, I want to model it. So I implore you to use whatever we've used and whatever resources I can provide for your projects. Let me know. But thank you for being on here today. And if you have questions about what we're doing, You can go to our website, become and join our newsletter, and you'll get information about what's going on consistently, and be able to see where we've come from and where we're going. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you. As you can see, Mr. Washington has given us all kinds of ways that we can work with the theme, nothing about me without me. That's a perfect example of the project that is a terrific project there in the Kennard project there in Centerville. And we thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. Thank you so very much. Absolutely wonderful. Are there any questions in the chat room?
There are no questions so far, but just some comments. Mr. Goodhart says, such an impressive project. Congratulations and bravo, Clay. My colleagues and I look forward to working with you on Chesapeake Heartland. A comment from Ms. Corsi, excellent work and thank you.
Okay. Yes, okay. So
Ms.
now,
Day also comments, really impressive project. I'm glad that you were able to bring both state and county resources to support this effort. There is one question from Ms. Acree, and she says, does the African American Heritage Preservation Group still exist?
Yes, Yolanda, it does. In fact, its grants come up, I think, in July of each year, around the 15th. And they are capital grants, I would let you know. So I know you guys have the property over in Kent County that you might want to consider doing some work on. So those grants are still available. I don't think the legislature has written them out yet.
are you talking about the African American Heritage and Culture?
Well, yes, that grant.
Yeah.
AHPP
It's
grant.
part of the Maryland Historical Trust, just like Maryland Heritage Area
Yes.
Authority is. So they will be coming up soon. And if you, I know that Gail, do you know exactly when they're coming up?
I do not. However, we always send out a notice in our e-newsletter that we send out when those grants are available. So if any of you haven't signed up for our e-newsletter, you can do that. Just send me the same, your email address with the same address to the same address where you registered.
Thank you. Okay, and again, we appreciate that, Clay. It was a very wonderful presentation. So now is
I do have one more question before we move on to the next presentation. Ms. DeShields asks, Mr. Washington, would you speak a bit more about how you obtained matching funds and what you did and what did you include in the match part apart from cash donations?
Well, it was predominantly, I got to be honest, it's predominantly cash. You can use in kind, but unless you got somebody that's going to step up and do the work for you and to give you a big chunk of that match, it's usually insignificant, the in kind is. But I will tell you that, and some grants allow you to use up to like 25% of in kind funding. But in most cases, I use county funds to match state funds. I use our own funding, again. You got to start with some fundraising ideas to get some funding for yourself. And it took the association a long time to build up $100,000. We can do it a lot faster now because we have a venue to be able to hold events in. But in most cases, I use county funds to match state funds. And that you can do.
okay. Are there any other comments?
Just many of you that have not visited the Kennard School and Museum, we're urging you to do so whenever you can.
Yeah, go to our website, and there are we're not open on a regular basis, so you can't just walk in and view the museum. But the building is now open for other programs. So that means you can come in and look around. But you can contact me, and I'll arrange for a visit for the museum and a tour.
I just want to ask you one question before we leave, and maybe you can answer this in 10 words or less. In terms of the theme that we're working from today, nothing about me without me, making shared heritage interpretation a reality. Can you speak to that for a moment and say how your project fits into that theme?
It absolutely fits into it. We are a part of a community's growth. We're a part of a county's growth. We're a part of state growth. But unless we tell that story, a lot of people don't know that. And generation to generation really forgets. So we have to be purposed, and we have to be diligent to be able to, and we have to be dogged, in other words, to be able to tell our story and let people know that we exist, because it couldn't happen without us.
Thank you. I'd also like to say at this point that we're getting ready to go into another speaker, but I want to say that we were going to have our president here today. I'm a board member, as well as Jana, Darius, Tara, and I don't know, and of course Gail is our executive director. But our president was scheduled to be here, but he's having a very serious family issue which came about overnight. So he's not able to be here, and hopefully all of you all will have he and his family in your prayers. His name
Paulette, thank you. I did want to interrupt. There is one more question from Ms. Kyle to Mr. Clay Washington. How are you promoting or marketing the museum to visitors?
At this point, and this has been a tough 2 years, as we all know, we're doing it through newsletters, through our website, to social media. And when we have events, we do promote those events. And I use other organizations to help promote ours. Beyond that, I have not done much else in terms of promotion, but we're working on it.
Clay, isn't the Kennard Museum part of the Queen Anne's Consortium that once COVID is straight will be open on the first Saturdays of every month?
Yes, we are, and that happens, but that happens only for 5 months out of the year. So we will be open for that. In fact, we'll be open beyond that starting. We started back in June, and we're continuing. Okay, the building, because we have events ourselves during the course of the year, but we do join with the Historic Sites Consortium in opening up the first Saturday of each month from May through October. But I'm going to do a little more than that this coming year, if we can suppress this COVID blight that we're in right now.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. I did have another question for you.
Just let me know when you're ready, Jana.
I'm sorry. Okay, I will. Thank you. Mr. Johnson wants to know, can you speak more about how you foresee younger African Americans participating in the continued preservation of the building and local history in general?
Okay. Recruitment. It's the only word I can really use. Again, I'm pretty dogged about getting people involved, and I've been looking for younger people to join our board. We were successful this year in getting 3 new board members of the younger generation. And in fact, all 3 of them are descendants of original board members. So that's one where we're getting involved. Through our events, we invite young people to be part of them. Hopefully that by doing so, they'll want to get involved. I don't know about you guys and your projects, but I have a tough time recruiting young people to get involved on a volunteer basis. They all seem to know what we're going to give them for them to be part of us, and it saddens me. It really does. But we won't stop trying because of that. I see Adam. I happen to look up at his face, and I know the things that I talked to. What's the other young man that's involved in the Heartlands project? Just on the screen with us the other day. From Washington County, from
Darius Johnson.
Darius, he's right there.
No, that's not who I'm talking about.
Oh,
Sorry.
Isaiah.
Yeah, there you are, Patrick. Patrick brought a group, for example, to the Kennard a couple of years ago now, and those kind of things we need to keep young people knowing what we're doing, but at the same time to be hands-on. I'm hoping to offer once COVID kind of goes away, I'm hoping to offer some internship programs. We'll even make them some paid internships to get young people involved. And then once they get involved, and I hope they'll stick, if that answers your question. If you have any ideas, please let me know.
Thank you, Clay. Paulette, I think we need to move on, and we can hold any other questions for Clay until the rest of the speakers.
Let us go now to our next speaker, and we're gonna go in with Legacy Day. Legacy Day celebrates the rich cultural heritage of African Americans in Kent County, and it's
Paulette,
huh?
I'm sorry, excuse me. Miss Brooks was able to join us. She's now online.
Okay, so then what I'm gonna do is, I wanted to go through this one and then go back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
It's an opportunity for all residents to recognize their shared history and have an enjoyable time. While the most visible part of the festivities for many attendees is the parade and block party Saturday evening. Legacy Day incorporates a lot more, including a great deal of research into the history of the year's theme and a full day of experiences built around the theme. And our speaker today will be Miss Airlie Ringo Johnson, who is a native of Chestertown who left the area just after her high school graduation. Upon returning to historical Chestertown in her retirement years, she realized that Kent County's history continued to focus on white colonial history. Because of her continuous interest in history, she joined the Historical Society's Board of Directors for Kent County, and her sole purpose for joining the historical board was for the history to become more inclusive of Kent County's Black race and to highlight the accomplishments and culture of the entire community. And one of her first ventures was to establish the county's annual Legacy Day, which celebrates African American history and culture. Current plans are being made for the 9th annual celebration, and the crowd numbers about 1,500. She also volunteers with the Star Center, has been there for about 6 years. She officially became a staff member with the Chesapeake Heartland project 2 years ago. The project focuses on preserving African American history and shows how African Americans are an integral part of Kent County's history, as the project uncovers many untold stories of the cultural contribution. I'd like to introduce to you Miss Airlie Johnson.
Thank you so much, Paulette. Great introduction. I'd like to talk, we'll be talking about Legacy Day, and I want you to know that I will go and describe, giving you background of Legacy Day. And then at the end, I'll show a brief clip that will be about 4 minutes that highlights Legacy Day 2019. Legacy Day started in the fall of 2013. I joined the board, the Historical Society board, around 2010. And as Paulette mentioned, I joined that board because their history presentations were not inclusive of our history. And once I joined the board, I found other like-minded members who felt the same way. And so we moved around for 2 to 3 years, and we sponsored different African-American historical presentations, not just for Black History Month, but throughout the entire year. And after a while, one evening, we were all sitting around, the 4 of us, it was 4 members from the Historical Society board that wanted the history to be more inclusive. And we were reminiscing about the Charlie Graves days, which some of you may remember, the Uptown Club in Chestertown, and how this was started in the late 40s up into the 60s or 70s and 80s, and how there's nowhere to dance in Chestertown now. And so the original plan was to do a very small scale of like a cabaret. Well, as we continued to work, we realized that the sole survivor, Charlie Graves, was the owner of the Uptown Club. And we realized that his child, the last remaining child, is still with us. And we contacted her to see if she would want to be part of us. And then when she started working with us, what we planned as a cabaret exploded. And we went on and we decided to have, she wanted to have a parade and she wanted to have outside activities. And we went along with her plan because it sounded like a good plan, but we were still only thinking it would be about 250 people. Well, as it turned out, we had about 1,500 people. And at that point, we realized we were really on to something. And so we continued to move forward with each year planning a different theme. And it's very interesting with the same group that we had in 2013, we basically have the same core group now in 2022. We've added younger members, and we've been able to add younger members because we actually went out and recruited them. Yes, it's difficult to get younger members, but we do have about 4 younger members, and I give them all the credit for us being able to continue our festival when all the other festivals in Chestertown were closed down. It was because of the young people that had the vision of how we could keep moving forward. And we listened to them. And so that was, as Paulette just said, we're into planning the 9th vision now, the 9th celebration. And just to give you an idea of some of the themes that we've had in the past, in 2014, the theme was to celebrate the Uptown Club and Charlie Graves Club. And that got a lot of attention from the community because so many community members remember it, had very fond memories of the Uptown Club. And then during that era, there were a lot of local bands that were formed. And some of them were extremely good. They traveled throughout the Delmarva Peninsula. And so the second year we were celebrating the local bands that emerged from the Charlie Graves era. Then we went on to Black Entrepreneurs. 2017, we went on celebrating educators before integration. And at that point, that meant we were contacting the school, Garnett, which is the local high school in Chestertown, or was the segregated high school. It became integrated in 1967. So we were contacting teachers that were that taught in the 60s. And we had about 15 teachers that came back. Again, that got an awful lot of interest because many of the community members were interested in seeing the teachers. And also the community was not aware of the community at large was not aware of the schools before integration. And so there was a lot of interest from all community members. And then the next year we celebrated the students. We went on to Black churches. Black churches meaning historical churches that were more than 125 years old. In small Kent County, we had about 15 churches that were founded 125 years ago, and many of them, I think it was 10 of them, are still meeting now. Then we went on to Black athletes. Now, because of COVID, we actually had to pull back because it was all virtual that year. We even had a dance party that was virtual. And then this past year, 2021, we had a very big celebration. We expanded the space. In previous years, we had the celebration downtown Chestertown, but we also moved into a larger area, which is a park because of COVID. And then in the year 2022, our 9th year, we will be celebrating veterans. So I want to tell you a little bit about the format of Legacy Day. On Friday evening, we always have a reception, and that's to celebrate the honorees. And it's actually a very nice catered reception where, you know, all the highlights that we've unfounded, we will discuss or we will have and present at that evening. And then all the honorees will, this past year, they got medallions. Remember, the theme was athletes, and they got medallions just, you know, as you get when you win a race. And they were very excited to get those. And plus they got, you know, recognition as well. So we have the reception on Friday night. On Saturday, we keep changing activities. Usually on Saturday mornings, we will have the genealogy workshop. That gets an awful lot of attention. One year we had the African American Museum from DC. They actually presented, this was the year when everything was virtual. We had about 250 people view that workshop that year. But we do change each year for the genealogy workshop. We will have a different person presenting the workshop. And it's always very interesting. And we've learned that if you have lunch after the workshop, then that's a reason for people to stay around longer. Now, all day long on Saturday, we try to have a workshop. In previous years, we've had a workshop for Black artists. One of the art galleries in Chestertown reached out to us and said, we want to get involved. And that's the beauty of Legacy Day. Many organizations reach out to the Legacy Day committee and they want to know how they can get involved with Legacy Day. So we have an ongoing, all day long Black artist format for everyone, for the artists to actually go and sell their artware. And then in the afternoon, we've had a gospel concert. Sometimes we have recording artists there, or sometimes we may just have local groups, but that's always well attended. Again, you will get about 300 or 400 people in one of the larger churches that's in Chestertown. And everything that we do in the area, it's always a very, very mixed crowd because everyone is interested in these, the historical facts that we uncover. And then from the gospel concert, we go to the Saturday evening activity, which has proved to be very exciting because we have a lot of food vendors. We usually have about 6 or 7 food vendors. We also have craft vendors, and it has been up until the last 2 years. Remember, it was right downtown Chestertown. So that was a nice area. You got to see a lot of people. We start with the DJ's playing, then there's a big parade that's at 5 o'clock, and you'll see some of the parade in the video that we're getting ready to show. And then we have a live band. The live band plays for 3 segments, and while the band is taking a break, then we have the DJ. The DJ comes back on. So there's like a continuous celebration the whole evening. This is after all the historical facts have been presented to the community. Legacy Day did start with the Historical Society of Kent County. And after about 3 or 4 years, when they saw when they saw Legacy Day was expanding as it was, they felt as though it was a little too big for their mission. So we started working with Sumner Hall. And so Legacy Day is produced, at this point, is produced by Sumner Hall and the Historical Society. So both organizations work together, but the Sumner Hall is the one that's really in charge. And it's also sponsored by a wide range of individuals, businesses, and community organizations. When you look at the video clip, you'll see there's a large banner that we have, and it highlights all of the people, from the people in over $1,000 category on down to some of the members, community members, they may just give $25. But when you put it all together, we usually get about $15,000 a year to move forward with Legacy Day. And I need to say that every program, everything that Legacy does is open and free to the public. And it's free to the public because of all the donations that we get from the community. So it's like a badge of honor if you have your name up on the banners. We have 2 huge banners throughout the town of all of our sponsors. And then we have our signature fans, which you'll also see in the video. That will have on the back, you will see all the sponsors as well. So we're very careful to highlight and give thanks to all of our sponsors. that is, oh, and aside from all the everything being free and open to the public, we also give anyone that participates in Legacy Day, they get an honorarium. We don't really want or need anyone to do anything for free. We especially want to give back to the Black community. So like the ones that's in the gospel concert, they will get an honorarium. Unless you are one of the recording artists, then we will pay you what you've been asked. That is the main part of Legacy Day. I'd like to show the film now, and we're going to stop the film a couple of times, and then we will have more questions, a time for questions afterwards. And the beginning, one of the first things you'll see after the introduction of the video will be the banner. And I just want to take a pause, and that's at 7 seconds into the video for everyone to see the banner that I'm talking about. This is only 4 minutes, by the way.
Are you able to hear the volume?
We do not hear the volume, Pat.
Okay, probably once I unmute. Airly, will you just give me a thumbs up when you can hear the volume?
Okay. Okay, so this is the banner that I was talking about, and you can see you see how large it is. Up at the top there, you see the logo. That's our signature logo, which is in remembrance or reminiscent of the posters that were used in that era, the Charlie Graves era of people dancing. So we're very proud of that dancing logo part. That's sort of like our brand, and also the colors. And then you'll go down and you can read the categories. R&B is for 1,000 more, jazz is 500. And then you get down to hip hop, a few others, and then bebop, I do know, is at the very bottom. So that's all of our sponsors that we're very proud of, and we continuously thank them the whole time. Okay, we're ready to go on now. We're missing the sound again, Pat. Good. Good. No, it's not anymore. It went away. It was for a few seconds. No sound.
If I adjust the volume, it goes to mute for some reason. Or perhaps the host, I don't know if I'm being automatically muted by the host, but if so, then the volume will also go out. So let me give it another shot. Airly, let me know if it's volume.
Okay.
Good.
I just put this in the chat, but I could actually hear it in that section. I don't know if it was just me or what it was, or if it's low in that piece, but I could hear it. It was a little bit faint.
Let me try again. Airly, can you hear? ahead, Early. You're muted.
I just wanted to, in the clip right before that, if you can back up for just a few seconds, Pat, that's the community band for Kent County, and they always played the National Negro Anthem. That's like the beginning of the parade. So I wanted to point that out to everyone because that's another thing that's become a signature of Legacy Day, to start off with the National Negro Anthem. This is one of the activities for Saturday night. Okay, thank you.
Early, let me know if you hear the sound.
This was at the genealogy workshop and the luncheon afterwards. So this is more of the evening activities in downtown Chestertown. She's our signature dancer. She's always out front dancing every year. These are the parade marshals, two of our ministers. I want you to notice the fans in the community, in the audience there. That's the Corvette Club. Watch the truck go up. The band from Northern Virginia, but the leader is actually from Kent County. When you see those bright neon shirts, those are committee members. That's the logo again. So, thank you, Pat. That in a nutshell is Legacy Day. I'm happy But no, before questions, I do want to mention that those bright neon, I kind of mentioned it during the video, all the committee members wear that so that at any given time, if you need something, you always know to look for the bright green shirts. Neon green. Okay,
Wonderful
Yeah.
presentation. Thank you so much, Airly.
you're welcome, Paulette.
Wonderful presentation. And just briefly, can you connect the Nothing About Me Without Me to Legacy Day? Just, because
Well,
the presentation was self-explanatory in terms of a wonderful event. I can't wait to get there. I've never been. So I should have a chance to get there this year because I have enough time to know when it's going to happen. When does it take place?
it's always the third Saturday in August.
Third Saturday in August. Okay.
That's why we need the fans, because it's really hot.
So we want to know how do you see connecting Nothing About Me Without Me to the Legacy Day?
So first of all, before the community, before the community history group started as part of the historical society, there was nothing about us, period. We were not included. And it took a friend of mine from DC, we came back for her. I was very excited to show her the historical society. This was before I moved back. And she goes, well, this is all good. I love history, but I don't see anything about your people in here. And it's like, oh my gosh, that was a light bulb. So before that time, there was nothing about us, period. And so nothing about us without us. We are telling our story through Legacy Day. We have a very mixed committee, but we all work together in telling our story. And I do want to mention that Jana Carter is a very active member in our committee, right? The Legacy Day committee. She's on the board of directors here with MHAA.
Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Kennard is a very active member of the Stories of the Chesapeake Heritage Area. So I guess we'll just keep stretching her thinner and thinner and thinner. That way she'll produce more and more and more. Did you hear that, Jana?
I am listening. Yes, I am.
Okay. Do we have anything in the chat room?
We do. We have one question from Elizabeth Watson, and it's for both Clay and Ms. Early. Speaking as a longtime observer of both Kennard Project and Legacy Day, I just want to add for those watching these incredible accomplishments that while the basics were in place from the beginning, including tight visionary groups who enjoyed working with one another, what you are seeing are mature programs. From little acorns, great oaks will grow. She would like to ask both Clay and Airly, if you were just starting out, what did you get right from the beginning, and how would you advise others starting out?
Very good.
Do you want to go first, Clay?
Doesn't matter. I will.
Okay.
What did we get right? What we got right was vision and passion to start with. It was something we felt we needed to do. And then secondly, we found people who would buy into it to help us. Those were the two biggest factors, I think, in making it come to realization that you have to have help and you have to be not afraid to ask for it. I find all too often that people want change to happen, but they're afraid to step out of the background and ask for it and make it happen. So the things I noticed first was that once we determined that we needed to do it, we found people that were willing to help us do it.
Very good, thank you.
And what we did right, well, first of all, I want to say that I think initially, Legacy Day just happened. It grew its own legs very, very quickly. And once we saw that the organization or that the festival was growing, then we started putting more and more in place to keep it growing. This year, we have great plans for the veterans celebration. And And I see Drew McMullen's on the call. They have reached out, Sultana has reached out, and they want to work with us this year. And that's just another example. So I think the other thing would be getting the whole community involved. First, we started with committee members that bought into the festival, and then organizations came aboard as well. And the Star Center has been one of our donors from the very beginning. So that's been exciting.
Thank
I
you
have
so
thank you. I'm sorry. I have another question for Ms. Johnson from Ms. Day. Can you see an expansion of community interest in African-American history and heritage programming since you started Legacy Day? This is a two-part question. That's the first question. And the second would be, how has the festival impacted the community awareness of African-American history?
We have seen the interest of the entire community in African-American history from the very beginning. It was very quickly established and shown to us that everyone was interested in our history and the culture. And the second part, what's the second part, Jana?
The second part to that question was, how has the festival impacted the community awareness of African-American history?
Oh yeah, well, most people, African Americans have been invisible in many communities, and Chestertown was pretty much no exception. And so now that we are able to portray more and more of the history, then more people are interested in knowing what happened or is happening in the African-American community. And this is a great move to Chesapeake Heartland because it's shown the community even more of what the culture of the African-American community and how much we've added to just the building of the county. Without us, the county would not be as rich as it is now. Rich in resources, rich in the work that African Americans have done. With Chesapeake Heartland, we are uncovering that many of the community members worked very closely together to build Kent County.
Thank you. Here's another question from Darius Johnson. Thank you. I really appreciate the point about the Historical Society transferring ownership of Legacy Day to Sumner Hall. How did that transition to a partnership with a Black-led organization go? Was it easy or difficult, and why? And what can other organizations learn from that?
That was probably one of the most, that was a very easy transition because Sumner Hall was looking for an event such as Legacy Day, for Legacy Day to call home. We got Legacy Day, we received quite a bit of support from Sumner Hall because they were just excited to have Legacy Day as part of Sumner Hall. So it was a good transition, and one that has worked well. And it's good to know, it's good to also have the Historical Society involved as well, because those two organizations, when it comes to Legacy Day, they do work very well together. So yeah, that's a really good question. Yes, Jana.
The last part of that question is, what can other organizations learn from that?
To work with each other. I think that's always important. When you look at organizations, it's always good to get outside of your box and your level, your comfort level, and work with other groups as well. So I think that's the whole thing, is that you have to work with each other. It's when you get a grant for one area, that's great, but you also need to work with the community at large and share what you've uncovered with other groups And when you're working together, when you collaborate, you're able to present a stronger organization, a stronger picture of what actually did happen.
Thank you. I have another question for Mr. Washington. It's similar to the first question that we asked Ms. Johnson. So in that vein, what can you see an expansion of community interest in African American heritage since the programming started at Kennard? And have you noticed any more community awareness since Kennard Center has opened?
I got to say very much so. There's an unfortunate factor here involved also. When we started this project, my hope and my dream was that the African-American community would buy in very quickly and get on board. It didn't happen. Unfortunately, there was great apathy in the African-American community. I still can't understand why, but it was. And I think because the population had grown older, the younger people were starting to move away. And at that point, they didn't buy in the way I thought they would. So I said, well, when we finish the project and we get the building up and running, the buy-in will come then because it'll be theirs. Still hasn't come the way I thought it should. But what has happened is there's the other part of our community, the non-African American part, has bought in graciously. And they always seem to be eager to learn more. And that's part of what we wanted to happen. We wanted the people to become aware of who we are, where we've come from, and what we've contributed to be where we are today. And that has happened, and it still continues to happen. We were able to partner with the Historical Society of Queen Anne's County, much like the one in Kent County. It said very little about us. So when Jennifer Moore came to me 8 months ago, with the project of bringing the Smithsonian's Voices and Votes exhibit to Queen Anne's County, she reached out to us, and it became a great collaboration. And because of it, more and more people have gotten to know who we are, and they're spreading the word. And I will tell you, our donations have gone up in the midst of the pandemic, with people wanting to keep us going. So it has had great impact, not in all the places that I would hope it would have had, but because we've gotten some younger people on our board, they're talking to their friends, they're talking to their sisters, brothers, aunts, and uncles, and they're buying in. I just hope we can get by this so we can have more events at the building. We started this new adult learning classes in February. We've already gotten African Americans to sign up for classes, which I think is a great thing. So yes, people are buying in and they're coming on board.
So
Thank
maybe, you finished, Jana?
No, ma'am, there's a couple more questions.
Just let me know when you finish.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So Ms. Day says, thank you, Mr. Washington, for your observations. I'm glad that some folks are more eager to learn about African-American community history. Hoping you will gain additional support from your own community when in-person programming can expand. Having the donations go up is a great sign. Ms. Corsi says, this happens all too often. The population vested in history is aging. Could it also be the lack of school local history connection? And that question, I guess, could be posed to either Ms. Johnson or Mr. Washington, whoever wants to respond.
I'll speak first on it. What I found was that there's a big gap between the generation that lived the history and the generation now that needs to know about it. And the gap was because things got lost. There was no recordation. It's hard for me to find contributions for our museum from families and from, because the things that we thought were important to us when we were growing in that generation no longer became important to our siblings, to our children, or to the next generation behind us. So a lot of this stuff has been lost. And that's the biggest gap on getting information.
With Legacy Day, we celebrate oftentimes it's older Americans because it's historical information. But what we have found is that the older Americans are so excited to bring their children to the exhibits. And so and then another thing we have, the Historical Society does stay open late the downtown when we have all the dancing. And you will see constant activity with the young people moving in and out, being very proud to show their grandparents have been celebrated. So, you know, it is hard to get younger people involved. And yes, part of it is probably because of the lack of education in the schools. But we're working to overcome that. It's been lost previously, but part of what we're doing now is restoring and preserving the history.
I want to commend you, Ellie and Carolyn, what you guys are doing over in Kent County. I'm looking to use some of that same energy to get people involved here in Queen Anne's County. So I will be tapping on your door.
Anytime, Clay.
Thank you. That concludes the questions.
Thank you all very much. This is a wonderful presentation, wonderful input, wonderful speaking, and hopefully all of those who are tuned in are really getting to understand nothing about me without me, and making shared heritage interpretations of reality. And that's really what we're seeing. That's what we're hearing in these presentations, the shared realities of making it happen. And now we're going to go to our final speaker. She is with the Chesapeake Heartland. And I'll say this again, and maybe some of you were not on board when I read it before and she was not here. The Chesapeake Heartland is a new collaboration between the National Museum of African American History and Culture and Washington College, and a diverse array of local organizations, including Sumner Hall, Kent Cultural Alliance, Kent County Public Library. And its mission is to preserve, digitize, interpret, and make accessible materials related to African American history and culture in Kent County. Ms. Carolyn Brooks will be our presenter. And she's born and reared in Kent County in the rural areas of Coleman in the agriculture and farming community. She attended segregated elementary schools in Coleman and later attended the segregated Garnett High School in Chestertown. After she graduated from high school in '62, she attended the Historical Black College at the University of Morgan State in Baltimore and received a BS in Psych. And in 1968, when Coppin State College in Baltimore offered a graduate studies program in special ed, she attended and received a master's degree in special education. In 1970, when she returned to state employment, the same agency she had left to attend graduate school at Coppin, the Maryland State Department of Employment Security, and now the Department of Labor, Licensing and Regulations. She held several positions there, including supervisor, office manager, and supervising employees in Upper Eastern Shore, including Kent, Queen Anne, Caroline, Talbot, and Cecil counties. After 43 years of state service, she retired and returned back to Kent County to her roots, where she enjoyed working with nonprofit community services and church ministries. She was attracted to working with the Chesapeake Heartland Project because of its focus in preserving the rich African-American history of Kent County for generations to come. I'd like to present to you Ms. Carolyn Brooks. Ms. Brooks.
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
I am one of the 2 local community historians with the Star Center working on the Chesapeake Heartland Project. The project, the first slide that you see is a photo of when the college sponsored a trip to the National Museum of African American History, and it was I think it was by 3 busloads of citizens of Kent County.
Are you able to see the next slide now, Carolyn?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
This project, as was said earlier, is a collaboration between the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., the Sumner Hall, the Kent Cultural Alliance, which formerly was the Kent County Arts Council, the Kent County Public Library, and several local organizations, churches, and other nonprofits in Kent County. As was stated before, its mission is to preserve, digitize, interpret, and make accessible materials related to African American history and culture in Kent County, Maryland, and beyond. These materials include slave papers, receipts, and broadsides, such as this one of an escaped Negro named Amos that was posted for his return and a $30 reward for his capture, which is a part of our Commodore collection. We also have pictures of the segregated Garnet High School yearbooks, the Vital Food plant in Kent County, recorded gospel music, the Freedom Protest, and the Freedom Rise in 1962, and 3D objects. We now host a community-generated digital archives of over 6,000 items from community members, community fellowship program, in which there's an average of at least 6 community members per year may participate in the fellowship program. The agenda for today will include community roots, community center planning, community center design, community-led archiving, conclusions, and any questions and comments. Many of the local partnerships that had been developed were before the project in 2016, but were solidified with the partners coming together with the Smithsonian Institute Moms Project Museum on Main Street. Adam Goodhart, the Star Center, introduced the program to Sumner Hall, and the board, which I was a member of at that time, was very elated and moved forward with the idea. Sumner Hall and the Star Center wrote up the proposal, and to our surprise, we were one of the 5 counties in Maryland to receive the grant. With this grant came other partnerships, the Board of Education, High School, the Kent County Library, Kent County Arts Council, the local community members, and churches. The Moms exhibit, The Way We Worked, brought the community together in a very positive, engaging way, especially the exhibits by the local community members that were displayed throughout the county. These are some of the exhibits that were displayed by local community members. Some of the other activities, as early talked about, Legacy Day celebrations. We also had that, which is a very popular in the African American community, is the Martin Luther King Day annual observance and breakfast. It is one of the 2 biggest events in Kent County for African Americans, the Legacy Day and the Martin Luther King Jr. annual breakfast. The program, these type of programs bring all peoples together in the sharing of Martin Luther King Legacy Day. The major partners in this endeavor is the Washington College at Large, the Star Center, and the Kent Cultural Alliance. Because of all of the injustices, the social unrest in the county, specifically with the killing of Antone Black, who has roots in Kent County, the Social Action for Racial Justice Committee was formed to address some of these racial injustices and try to rectify through anti-racism workshops and training. As you can see, through all of these events and plannings and building of these early partnerships, it built trust and friendship, which led to the successful endeavor of the Chesapeake Heartland project. Mr. Lonnie Bunch, the founder of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, who's now the president of the Smithsonian, while receiving an honorary degree from Washington College in February 2017, made a pre-planned visit, which was spearheaded by the Star Center in Sumner Hall. He was very impressed with our receiving the grant for the Moms Project. When he returned on a second visit, he suggested that we form an ongoing partnership with the National Museum of African American History and Culture. Curators and historians will work closely with local community organizations, citizens, Washington College students, and faculty. The vision would be a diverse local network. Adam and Pat of the Star Center staff kept that vision alive and had several conversations with Mr. Bunch and kept the ball rolling. Lonnie Bunch made a tweet about his visit here in Kent County, which he stated, "During the time I spent with Chestertown students, teachers, museum staff, and community members, it struck me that the dynamic work that we're doing was the most important thing a community can do. Remember by remembering. We honor the past and help shape the future." Due to the partnerships and community leadership, a group of concerned and interested community members was formed, focusing on this community endeavor. It consisted of members of Sumner Hall, Kent County Arts Council at the time, which is now the Kent Cultural Alliance, the Board of Education, churches, government agencies, just an array of persons that we formed the Community Advisory Board to write up the grant proposal. Members of the community leadership at Washington College attended conferences and training, one which was in Bowie State. Early Ringer, Paris Young, one of the Washington College students, Pat Nugent, G. Wortman, and I attended a community curation project in Denver, Colorado in November 2018. Suzanne, the National Museum National Museum of African American History Culture curation staff firsthand. So this is a photo of when we were in Denver. These are some photos of us not only at work, but just having a little bit of fun after after a long day's work, I say. Gordon Waters, he designed the project logo and the Sankofa bird. And on the, tells you what the Sankofa bird, it represents looking backwards and remembering the past while still moving forward. And Gordon became a member of the, one of our committees, as well as on the Sumner Hall. This is a student with a community member that's looking at some collections, photo collections. Okay. Pat would talk to you a little bit about the fundraising process before I get to the goals that were established for the project.
Well, I would just add, thank you, Carolyn, and really appreciate the presentation. I think I would just add that, as Carolyn's pointing out, there was, which I would kind of say was the key in many ways to community engagement for this project, was one, that the partnerships, so many of the conversations, so much of the planning happened before there was a particular agenda at hand. As Carolyn's suggesting, there was community work, there was anti-racism work, there was brainstorming, there were friendships and trust being made before we had a vision for building a digital archive. And I think that's an interesting kind of conclusion that I see out of kind of the last 4 to 5 years working with Airlie and Carolyn. And then also, before we really went out and did any fundraising for the project, the same holds true. We had a vision for a partnership with the National Museum of African American History and Culture. We didn't really know what shape that might take, and we hadn't put together concrete kind of grant proposals yet, but we began building a community advisory board. And we also did something interesting, which Carolyn will tell you about, which is we asked students to interview community members, kind of using the tools of oral history, but rather than to ask them about their personal past, we asked them what they wanted from the project in the future. And it was a unique approach to oral history, which really, I think, guided the project moving forward. And I think it's also another model that could be kind of borrowed or continued to be developed. This idea of kind of the tools of oral history being used to project plan as opposed to only kind of think about personal history. So Carolyn, I'll give it back to you.
Okay. Like Pat said, also in the planning process, we did a survey with the community members to find out just what they think that this project should do or what it should look like. And Washington College students worked on that project. And these were some of the items that they thought that we should consider. And these are the goals that we came up with. Create platforms for community interpretation, like oral histories and digitization of photos, artifacts, etc., such as digital archives and public-facing website. 2, support local schools, nonprofits, and Black-led businesses. Foster cross-generational and interracial conversations, and document joyous experiences that African Americans had, not just the downside, but the joyful things that we have in life, just as everyone else. And some of those things were like in education, entertainment, the kinds of foods we like, and so forth. Also came out the project was a need to hire 2 local communities historians, which we have Early Ringo and myself. 3 local organization of partners received sub-grants to projects and objectives and goals of the project to help support us with those projects. The Sumner Hall, the Kent County Allows, and Kent County Public Library. We established 9 community fellowships, community corporation fellowships across the 3 years. The first year in 2020, we had 3, and 2021, we had 5. We also established college and staff faculty fellowships as well, and they had to be in community engagement with the members of the Kent County community. And with the support from the MHAA, the project built the Chesapeake Heartland Humanities Truck, a mobile museum digitalization station. Early will give you more information about the Humanities Truck.
Thank you, Carolyn. So this is a picture of our Chesapeake Heartland Humanities Truck. And as Carolyn mentioned, it is a mobile museum, meaning that we do take it out into the communities and display. We have, at this point, we have about 10 different themes that we display. And we also try to tailor, whenever we take the truck out, we work to tailor the exhibit to the organization or to the activity of the day. For instance, when we went to Queen Anne's County, we were able to work with clay, and we got history that meant a lot to the Queen Anne County residents. And that's what's really important. When you see the community members come up and they start reminiscing about their history, that's worth all the extra effort that we've gone through to tailor our exhibits. The other thing that we have is a digitization station, so that inside the truck, when community members do bring some of their history, then we're able to move forward and digitize. This is a picture of actually this happened while the beginning of COVID, and we really were not able to go out to a community and become involved with community members because of COVID. But this was like the truck's maiden voyage to digitize some materials that we already had on hand. So the other thing I wanted to point out is you can see here, there's a television that's on that other slide, Pat, that we have that's on the outside of the truck that we can actually show and have shown videos to the community members as they come by and they look at the exhibits. Now, whenever we go out with an exhibit, we will have 3 to 4 tables of materials that that would be of interest to the community members. That's additional shots inside. This was at on the left, that's one of the college students presenting the exhibits that we have on hand to high school students. We had a high school program this summer that was called the Hip Hop Time Capsule. And so she did an excellent job in presenting to the students exactly what our exhibit was about. And that's what we want all of our interns to be able to present when community members come up to the table to present individually or as a group what they are seeing. And then on the right picture, that's the exhibit. And then there's some more of the students that are actually looking at the exhibit and listening to the student talk about what we had prepared for them that day. This is uptown, and I want to point out here, at some point, we looked like very uniforms, and you'll see Carolyn and myself there. We have on the Chesapeake Heartland shirts. So we got them middle of the summer, and we're very proud. And all of us wear the shirts whenever we're out on an exhibit. So that was uptown. So we did a lot of this is very interesting. It's always very interactive, whereas the students, they come up with questions to ask community members, and community members come in and write down their answers as they look at the exhibit on the inside. So you see on the left side, it's name your hero or shero. And then on the right side, it says name your favorite Black artist. So we will always have questions for community members to answer. And in here, you see the college students working with the high school students. Again, this was part of the Hip Hop Time Capsule that I just mentioned. That was the summer program that we had this past summer. And that proved to be valuable to have the college students and the high school students working together. That was a great program. More pictures inside. And this is back to Juneteenth Day that we had in Chestertown last year. So that's at the downtown park. And then we took the truck to the college campus as well. Now, this is our signature photo of the truck that we really like to share because it has all of the members. It has the college students, it has the high school students, and you'll see down in the front, there's Carolyn, Casey, and Pat. They're both staff members. Casey Stewart, he's one of the staff members as well, and also me on the right sitting down. So we love this shot because we had just given a great presentation to one of our major donors, and it all went well. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Carolyn.
Right, I will be talking about the Community Curation and Digitization Project. Community curation is simply the way to preserve our African American history by sharing of our stories by our people through their eyes and perspective, and uploading by video, audio, photographs, artifacts, documents, books into an archive that shows that the African American true story. Community digitization, the community members' individual collections are preserved by scanning devices and apparatuses to be uploaded into the archive. Students under the supervision of our digital archivist and historian, Jasmine Castro, are trained to digitize the materials that are accepted from the community to be digitized. Community cataloging is a system that makes it easier and accessible for members to view the materials that are uploaded on the archive on the website. Right now we have a photo of Mary Walker and the late William Pickering. And these are some of the items that are uploaded to the archives. And it gives a description of the picture saying this color photo shows Mary Walker and Kent County Commissioner William Pickering standing beside one another at a ceremony in which Mary Walker received the Governor Martin O'Malley's Volunteer Service Award in April 2009 in Annapolis, Maryland. And it shows her on the right, and this was at in Annapolis. Community interpretation means that the community members take lead in telling their stories and identifying informations within those artifacts or collections so that we have the true story of what actually happened. Besides listening to researchers, scholars, historians, and writers, we are able to tell our side of the story, the true side of the story, and these stories need to be acceptable to the public. And some examples is on our archives, we have the History Now, and we have the Hip Hop Time Capsule, which was a presentation by the students in the summer program. And Pat's gonna talk more about the Hip Hop Time Capsule.
Thank you, Carolyn. One thing I'll add, there's a lot of different ways that we're thinking about how to structure, how to invite community interpretation. And what Carolyn was showing here, I think, is a really interesting way in which she is doing that work. And that is by reaching out to Reverend Mary Walker, who selects the photos that she would like to go into the archive, which is an act of curation, selection, and interpretation in and of itself. And then Mary Walker also is telling us what she would like in the description. So the very fact, the metadata itself in this archive is generated by the community and for the community in ways that they would like to see kind of this information passed down. So I think even at a kind of what might be considered kind of, something very boring, right? The creation of metadata, what we're really trying to do is infuse it with this sense that nothing about us without us, even metadata description. And as Carolyn was suggesting, I'm going to briefly bring up, if you bear with me, just the website itself, the digital archive, to show a few other ways in which we're encouraging community interpretation. So bear with me. So I'm hoping you all can see the web page. Is that coming through? So this is our digital archive. We invite you to visit, to search, to explore, to sign up as a member, which would allow you then also, if you sign up here, you can create light boxes and presentations with the materials, another way in which the community can interpret these materials. And one can explore documents, moving images, so home movies, for example, sound, oral history recordings, or gospel tapes and still images. And again, to go back to that point, that so many of these materials are shared with us by the community and described for us by the community. And I think that's really important and maybe unique that most of these photos that are in our archive are taken from the angle of an African-American photographer as well. So in so many ways, this history that's presented here is by the community, from the photographer to the person who's selecting the photos to go into the archive, to the community member who's describing the materials. And really, Carolyn and Erly are doing so much of that work to meet with community members and gather the information and images. But briefly, I want to go to two other ways in which we found that particularly trying to get younger kids involved. And the one was a suggestion by Gordon Wallace in June of 2020 during kind of the that very kind of challenging time in June 2020, after police slayings and uprisings, Gordon Wallace, a young man from Kent County, said, "What is Chesapeake Heartland going to do?" And one of the things our community advisory boards kind of came up with was, I mean, not only were we individually involved in much of kind of the movements around June 2020, but we also thought as an organization, we could allow an outlet for people involved in movements in June 2020 or thereafter to document what they were doing during this moment. And so what has been submitted to the archive are images and video of people creating history now. And we've found that this is an interesting way to get younger people involved who are documenting the history they're making now to the archive. And so they can submit materials through the archive here, and then it goes to the digital archive. The other way that we've really involved high schoolers is creating paid internships for them to interpret the archive via the vehicle of hip hop. Air Lee, by the way, I noted that hip hop was very low on the donors list symbolically, so we'll have to discuss. But in any case, what we asked the students to do was to create album covers using images from the archive. They absolutely loved this activity, and in fact, actually helped come up with the activity in and of itself. So you can see the album covers that they created are borrowing from and editing and doing creative work with the images from the archive. And many of the students themselves said, "Hey, that's my family in the archive," and discovered their own family members, their own churches, and highlighted those in their album covers. And then each, as you'll see, kind of each student then put together songs that borrow from sounds from the archive, as well as kind of think about the themes of history in Kent County. And what I'll show is, I'll just play, I would urge you to come and check out the Summer 21 mixtape, which is kind of like our greatest hits of the summer. Such powerful work that the students created. And in particular, I'll play one example, hopefully you can hear it, of a student. In some cases, they were rapping over top of music that was mixed together from the sound archive. Hear that?
Slaves, from the work he sent you to the grave. And wait, don't be down. Feeling like you down, but no way around. On a day, see you finna leave town. Song, cool words, you know the sound. Down, in midnight.
That was one of our students telling the story of Harriet Shepard, who escaped from
Harriet
Chesterton.
You mean Harriet Tubman?
No, in this case, Harriet Shepard, who escaped from nearby Chestertown, and she stole her master's carriage and put on board that carriage 9 of her friends and family. And that story just really resonated with the students, and so much so that a student created a rap from the perspective of Harriet Shepard, which was far beyond what we ever expected. And here's also a spoken word poem that I'll briefly share.
It's not a dialogue, this a monologue, so hush, sit back and let history prolong. You don't hear about the state, the fate, and the hate of our race, only when it's thrown on TV and the news all on our face. Bet you don't hear about the good that's done in this town, the strength it took for the blacks to hold it down. Got these musicians all trying to save the history. I'm so scared this generation ready to lose kin to a mystery. What is that? Who are they? That's what they ask. But if black greatness wasn't held from us, then we wouldn't have to make all this fuss, but rather discuss. You got Karen Somerville, that is one of the few. Bet you didn't know she grew up around around gospel. I got a sick love, she needs a novel. In our group, some barking, she sings it all. All she do is wait for the churches to call. She's not just a vocalist, she's more than that. She's one of the reasons I wrote this rap. Trying to do the same thing as the hip hop capsule. Trying to bring back King County, but without the hassle. You got great people right from King County who get treated like land, and they still expect us to repent to their heaven sent. Mayetta, Garnett, Isaac, and Shorty, all famous around here, and they have a story. But you won't hear it unless you do the work. Work to learn about people other than dirt. Thanks for listening to these last bars. Please come on and remember these scars. Can't focus on the future if we forget the past. We gotta preserve it, I mean fast. If not for us, then at least for the last.
So really powerful interpretations, and I think challenging the students to kind of create hip hop out of the archive was we didn't know what to expect, but it really was, I think, a productive effort, and one we continue to hope to refine.
Was that reference to Karen Somerville?
It was, yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, Karen Somerville visited the group to discuss her own musical history as they were creating, and you know, we didn't make a demand that students incorporate these stories into their rap or poetry, but they just did. They wanted to. They were excited and inspired in ways by the guests and the stories that we presented. So I think this is a good example to conclude in community interpretation, and also ways in which maybe kind of meeting the youth in unique ways, in ways that they haven't really thought about in terms of how to interpret history, kind of not in a textbook, not on a museum wall, but in various kind of creative formats, and it seemed to take hold. So I'll pass it back to Carolyn, and if she gives me a minute, I think she's about to conclude, and I'll just bring back up the PowerPoint.
Early, we'll be discussing some of the challenges that we had and have in collecting oral histories and the digitalization collections.
So the first challenge was COVID-19. We had this great plan to visit African-American churches and inform them of Chesapeake Heartland. And I think we visited 3 churches before we got totally shut down. And then we had to regroup and figure out different ways, which we did. I mean, that was not a problem. And so the other thing was building trust. Like I did have one community member or a couple that I asked for a collection of their pictures. And they very nicely said, why would we give our pictures to a white organization, meaning the college? And I politely sat back and let them continue to talk as I was getting my thoughts together. And then I said, well, you know, first of all, if you don't give your history, what will happen to it when you pass on? We are trying to preserve African-American history. And the other thing is that we are giving back to the community. And I started naming the different ways that we give back to the community. So, and as we've expressed here. And after that, you know, I saw her softening and coming around, and they're like our biggest advocates right now. Anything that we want, that we know that they may be able to help with, they're all in our corner. So those we do have those challenges still. And to train community members and teachers to use the archive, just as Pat was showing you, how you can, you know, we want community members to go on if they see something that is incorrect, because we do have quite a few pictures and we work hard to make sure that everything is correct, but something will always slip by. So we want community members to take an onus of the website itself. And then it's also a challenge sometimes when we go to a family and ask for their family histories, they're not quite sure what we're looking for. And, you know, as we talk with them, it's like maybe 40 to 50 pictures that tell your story. we want pictures that show a story, something that's that the community at large can hang on to. We work with the community members to find those type pictures and then pass them on to the students, student interns, for them to digitize them. So those are some of our challenges that we're facing. And I think Carolyn might be ready. I'll just pass it on to Carolyn now.
So the concluding ideas for building a community engaged project, we offer these suggestions to you. Develop partnerships, friendships, and trust before the project. Bring all stakeholders to the table at the beginning, at the bus is moving it too late. Use the tools of oral history to ask community members about what they want from the project in the future. Make community identifying goals the building block of your project, and don't just your authority, share resources. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments?
I have a question, and Ms. Carolyn, I would like to know, how do you relate this project to nothing, the theme, which is nothing about me without me? I heard Patrick sort of mention it, but he didn't mention it in terms of, he mentioned it in passing. So either one of you can talk about it, but since you were the presenter, I was asking you, how do you fit this project into the theme of nothing about me without me?
I would fit it in a theme because what I've learned from this project is very unique, and it represents the voice of the African American community. It's the voice that has been silent. It's the voice that has not been heard in the making of the American story or the American dream. So I think this project adds validity to what African Americans have contributed to this country, and I think that this way we are getting the voices heard.
Thank you. Early, I would like to ask you a question also. How did you get around the community asking the question of why should we give our pictures and our history over to a white institution? How did you get around that? Or have you gotten around it? Early.
That question comes up very seldom. Only about 10% of the community members that we approach, or we get some concerns such as that. Whenever I hear that concern, I make sure that I just listen to everything that the community member is telling me. And then I work with them for them to understand that, again, we are preserving our history. We would like to have your history included. I mean, that one couple that came to me with that concern, they had a remarkable story, and I really wanted to get that story. So I'm just very calm with any opposition that I receive such as that. And then again, to tell them how much Chesapeake Heartland is giving back to the community. I mean, as we give back with the fellowships and the summer program, and there's just so many different ways that we are giving back. And as long as people know more about what we're doing, then they do, then they have a better understanding.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you. Anybody, any other comments? Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. Jana, are there any other questions or comments out in the chat?
Yes, we have a comment early on from Adam Goodhart. He just wanted to clarify something, and to commend Miss Carolyn for an excellent presentation, and to say that he really doesn't deserve the credit for the 2016 Main Street program. The primary leader at the time was a former assistant director who is a current board member of ISHE, and that is Jean Wortman, who's online with us today, who's now serving in the capacity of NEH and recently appointed to the ISHE board, working with Sumner Hall and some other 30 groups. So thank you, Jean, for kind of starting that and making sure, and the people that are working with it subsequently, making sure that it has wings. So thank you. Tara Corsi commented that the project is so cool, and I think she was referring to the hip hop time capsule portion of the presentation. Mrs. DeShield said that it was very innovative. We also have a question from Judy Hannon. Did you contact the schools to spread the word about input for the mixtape and hip hop projects in order to reach teenagers? And I think that question may have been directed towards Pat.
I'm happy to answer it. I know Airly and Carolyn might be able to add because all three of us really did a lot of outreach to the school systems. We presented to both teachers and students to recruit paid interns into that program. And we also kind of did outreach through Maneri's Dream Alliance, which is a nonprofit, Black-led nonprofit mentor group. And they were key also to kind of recruitment. We held the program there, so they shared their space with us. And the mentors that are in place at Maneri's Dream Alliance, come with built-in trust over years with many high school students as well. So we did kind of an all hands on deck approach to recruiting high school students. And it didn't hurt that we were also offering them paid position, and we were lucky enough to be able to offer paid positions to them. But I think we did reach out to the schools and continue to. And also we hope that the materials then are also adopted and adapted by the schools as well, because it's really powerful stuff that the students have shared. And in many ways, I think their own history classrooms were kind of motivating their, as you heard in the poem, I'm hoping that the lyrics came through, that the student who was sharing the history of Kent County, she was suggesting, why haven't we learned about these figures, and kind of wanting to include these figures and these stories within the school system. And I think that was an important mobilizer for students as well, and to kind of give them credit for being able to add these stories and pass on these stories themselves, and challenge them to do so. Early and Carolyn, anything on the outreach to add? Feel free to add.
Yeah, I would just like to add that we have staff members at Washington College that have worked with these schools as well in different programs, and they were able to help with the outreach also. So they knew the students directly, and that was an asset as well.
Thank you.
And I might as well take the moment to say, we'll do this next. We're going to do it this coming summer. So if anyone knows of any students, please let them know and put them in touch with us.
Thank you. That concludes all the questions from the chat. Paulette?
Thank you so very much. I'd like to again thank everybody for participating in this workshop. It has been absolutely a marvelous experience for the stories of the Chesapeake Heritage Area. And I look forward to seeing all of you plus at our next workshops. Our next workshop will be February the 8th. It's going to be called Building on Success, Emerging Projects. And February the 15th, we'll be creating collaborations for new projects. And all of them will start at 1 o'clock. And thank you so much for being here. I hope that all of you got as much out of this as I did personally. And I mean, I am just absolutely flabbergasted. I think that it's been a wonderful, wonderful setting to engage the community, all 4 counties, and some of the work that's being done that we may not have otherwise known. So please feel free to contact the Stories of the Chesapeake Heritage Area for anything else that we can do for you. Also look forward to having available for you the recording that, Gail, do you know when it's going to be ready, or to be ready soon?
We hope to have the recording of this session ready by the end of the week. And I encourage you to stay in touch with the Stories of the Chesapeake. We are one of the 13 certified heritage areas in the state of Maryland. In addition to this workshop series, we will also be having a workshop series on grant writing. And I remember back sort of the beginning of the session, there were some questions about finding that match. That will actually be one of the workshops we have, is how to find that match and how to work and how to do that. So thank you very much for participating.
Thank you, Gail. And Gail, by the way, is our executive director. So if does anyone else have anything to say from the Stories of the Chesapeake Heritage Area? If not, we thank you all so very much, and we look forward to seeing you at the next workshop. Take care, peace, and Happy New Year. Thank you very much, Airly.
You're welcome. It's good seeing